My name's Heather Burroughs, so I appreciate this chance to speak. I'm a mother of four children with disabilities, including a daughter who's medically complex and requires 24/7 home care. I'm the director of advocacy at Autism Up, and I sit on the board at the Coalition for Self-Direction. I've worked across education, healthcare, and nonprofit systems, and they're all so strained. And I want my children to thrive now, but I also want to know they'll be okay when me and my husband aren't here anymore. So families like mine are being pushed to the brink, and it's not because we haven't followed the rules. We've jumped through every hoop, probably more than once, but the systems are so tangled in bureaucracy that even families with knowledge and access are getting stuck. Olmstead and ADA were meant to protect our rights, but the implementation is really inconsistent. When we look at most integrated setting, it's sometimes applied so rigidly that it ignores the second half of the promise. The most integrated setting appropriate to the person's needs. And that distinction really matters. We all deserve the dignity of choice, but choice only matters when quality options exist and when those options are truly appropriate. For some, an early morning trip to like a bustling coffee shop on the corner might be ideal. But for others, sipping their morning brew in a familiar, quiet home environment is more suitable. So inclusion can't be forced. It must be supported with thoughtful accommodations that reflect what that person wants and what they need. My daughter's non-speaking and uses a letterboard to communicate. She also has a seizure disorder that are triggered by certain artificial ingredients like certain sweeteners. If her class takes a trip to a bakery, that is an integrated setting, but without precautions, it could expose her to unnecessary medical risks. Integration without thoughtful planning is not real inclusion. The goal must always be to support each person in a way that balances their constellation of needs with the meaningful experiences they want to have. And rights protection really requires equity and recourse. So we all deserve real choice, and that's only possible when quality option or that's impossible when quality options are scarce and when the allocation of funds really favors the use of congregate care. So let's be clear. We don't have a system where the money actually follows the person. Today, the average spend for someone in the highest need category, if they're in a certified setting, that's $216,000. But if that individual chooses to self-direct their services, they have to leave like $50,000 of that funding behind. The maximum allowable budget in self-direction is 161,000. And that is the very most. There's no way to appeal that amount. So due to the fundamental budget inequity, self-direction is not an option for people with high support needs, at least not a viable one right now, unless they have lots of unpaid support through family members and friends. And that's really not fair and it's not sustainable. That's not a system based on choice or a system that fulfills the promise of Olmstead. It's not really even functional. It's really pretty fractured. So what I'm advocating for is a continuum of care that supports both sustainability and flexibility. Families must know what their rights are and how to assert them. We have to know that we have the ability to appeal when we face a denial. I agree with everything everybody has said about the Ombuds program. I love that new option to have this resource come in and represent families, but they should also be able to represent us and support us in the actual fair hearing. We don't know, we can't compete with, formal lawyers and people who know what they're doing. And if we could expand that role so that it's not just, the beginning stages of advocating for us and empowering us, but brings us right through that fair hearing process, and it's really expanded to include the whole disability community, not just the ones with OPWDD. That would be amazing. I would love to see virtual dashboards that really expose the gaps that we are experiencing, the wait lists, and we can track how solutions impact outcomes. The last point I want to make is when needed services fall through, families fill the gaps. And if you don't have a family, you're in big trouble, right? The worst case scenario is we get blamed for the inadequacy of a plan. And I know people have referenced the CDPAP overhaul, and that really was a very good example of when a system changes and that those changes are made to us instead of with us. That rush transition just disregarded the safeguards that are always in place for every other population It destabilized care that keeps people out of institutions. That crisis that we're in right now was totally avoidable. We just needed some proper study, community input. So now we have these looming federal changes coming with Medicaid, and we're scared, right? But people with disability, aging adults, and those with strained finances, that's who Medicaid was designed to protect. And if New York State chooses, these groups don't have to carry the brunt of these shifts, especially after more than a decade of disinvestment. So I'm asking MISC to advocate for protected carve-outs for our population, um, so that the populations Medicaid was built to serve can be served. And when families are included, we can develop those practical, humane, cost-conscious solutions. Because Olmstead is not a checkbox, it was never meant to be. It's a promise that people with disabilities have choices, not ultimatums. If we truly integrate settings, we must stop expecting families to carry the systems that are intended to support them. Many of us have rolled up our sleeves and built innovative, cost effective models only to watch them get buried in red tape. For some reason in New York, Olmstead is routinely misinterpreted as requiring that we maximize hours per day that an individual breathes the same air as people without disability. And that misrepresentation is used as a weapon to crush improvements that allow people to live the way they want to live. With federal funding shifts underway, the apple cart's tipped over, guys. Whether we voted for it or not, but New York has choices. We can protect people Medicaid was designed for, and we can end the double standards. I see this as our chance to do better. The moment requires more than compliance. It demands that we honor the full spirit of Olmstead and make people with disabilities a true budget priority. Let's build a system based on choice, where the money truly does follow the person, where people get the resources they need to support them in the setting they choose, whether it's certified group home or their own place or an apartment with 5 friends. Thank you.